The sky has always been the first scripture of fear and wonder. Every civilization has read its trembling letters differently. In the 20th century, the United States Air Force raised its own liturgy to interpret those signs. In 1947, the nation looked upward and saw an enigma it could not name. And so a hierarchy of watchers was created to measure the unknown. They called the first program Sign, then Grudge, then at last Blue Book, a name chosen with bureaucratic calm, as if the celestial could be filed like a report, as if heaven itself could be indexed in a ledger. The purpose, outwardly, was simple: determine whether the glowing discs and errant lights were threats, illusions, or visitors. Yet beneath that purpose pulsed another will: to master the mirror of the unknown, to domesticate mystery and make it a servant of state. The men who wrote those first memoranda sat beneath fluorescent lamps, drafting definitions of reality. They measured sightings by triangulation, interviewed farmers and pilots, classified phenomena as stars, balloons, hoaxes. But even as they wrote, the ink of secrecy bled through the paper. Reports that hinted at technologies beyond the known were spirited away into darker corridors, places without letterhead or case number. Thus two heavens emerged: the outer sky of public record and the inner sky of hidden inquiry. The first was calm, rational, explained. The second, turbulent, nameless, magnetic. The Air Force kept the first for the world. The intelligence branches kept the second for themselves. In those years, the Cold War made the very atmosphere a battlefield of perception. Every light above the horizon might be a Soviet weapon or a divine messenger. And so the agencies built new senses for the nation: radar that reached beyond sight, cameras that froze the invisible, analysts trained to interpret the language of blips. They called this vigilance security, but it was also a priesthood, human minds translating the signals of a mechanical heaven. When the Central Intelligence Agency entered the scene, its mandate was not merely to observe, but to manage belief. A memorandum warned that UFO reports could spark hysteria, clog communications, or conceal enemy tests. Thus another operation began, not against objects in the air, but against ideas in the mind. The Robertson Panel of 1953 concluded that the phenomenon must be stripped of its glamour. Ridicule was to be the weapon, normalization a shield. From that moment, the public investigation became a theater, the performance of transparency concealing a choreography of control. Behind the stage, engineers worked on machines that imitated myth. High-altitude aircraft like the U-2 glimmered silver in the sunlight, turning day into alien night for those who saw them. Prototypes, such as the Canadian Avro car, spun on secret runways, experiments in vertical flight that looked like visitations from other worlds. If the populace reported discs, so much the better. Confusion cloaked progress. Every mistaken sighting was a veil thrown over genuine innovation. The blue cover of Blue Book protected not only the psyche of the people, but the birth of new machines of war. Yet even within official files, anomalies remained. By the project's end in 1969, 618 cases had been logged, and 701 refused explanation. They were called unidentified, a sterile word that hides its trembling. To the clerks, they were statistical residue. To the mystics, they were the whisper that reality had a second mouth. Those unresolved lights became the symbolic embers of the modern age, proof that the rational mind could map the stars, yet still be haunted by their silence. The historians would later say Blue Book closed because it found nothing. But the more precise truth is that its public window closed while its mirror walls remained. Parallel programs, moon dust, blue fly, continued to collect debris that fell from the sky, fragments of foreign craft or secret payloads. Each recovery blurred the line between earthly and otherworldly, between science and sacrament. Materials that resisted analysis were locked away. Reports that implied propulsion without fuel were marked eyes only. Thus, the second sky persisted, invisible yet institutional. To the initiate, Blue Book was never about aliens. It was about the management of wonder. for a state cannot allow unregulated miracles. They disrupt hierarchy. So the miracle must be cataloged, its aura replaced by a classification code. This is the essence of the forged sky, the deliberate creation of an official heaven whose order conceals the true, chaotic firmament. Where the public saw disclosure, the adepts saw a new rite of containment. Every press release, every calm denial was an exorcism spoken in the language of policy. And over time, the ritual worked. The masses ceased to look up with awe. They looked down at their screens, where information replaced revelation. The mystery migrated from the clouds to the circuits, from the telescope to the algorithm. Project Blue Book had done its work. It had converted transcendence into data, belief into bureaucracy. In the quiet rooms of the archives, reels of microfilm hummed like prayers trapped in glass, each frame a testimony to the human hunger for the impossible and the human fear of what that hunger might reveal. The sky of humanity is never merely a sky. It is a canvas upon which fear, invention, and ritual collide, and beneath the measured veneer of Project Blue Book, there spread the shadowed lattices of technology that whispered of dominion not yet named. For while the public gazed at typed reports, at 12,618 sightings reduced to logic and probability, behind the blue curtain machines moved in silence. Engines that defied comprehension, vehicles that spun like discs on hidden runways, turbines and VTOL mechanisms that mimicked the celestial, as though man had learned to sculpt the air itself into the imitation of the divine. And engineers whispered in secure rooms of craft that ascended without exhaust, of alloy frameworks that bent light, of instruments so sensitive they recorded a frequency beyond the human ear, and every metallic fragment recovered from secret crashes became a scripture for the initiates of engineering. Each blueprint a ritual of imitation, each design a mimicry of phenomena that the public only glimpsed as rumors or glimmers, while the CIA orchestrated the narrative like high priests of perception, inserting ridicule and misidentification as talismans of control, shaping belief as though it were clay, issuing memos that prescribed the boundaries of imagination. And yet the true work continued in hidden corridors where moon dust teams and blue fly operatives sifted fragments of the sky, fragments that might have belonged to foreign craft, experimental aircraft, or something altogether stranger. And there, in the chambers of analysis, instruments traced energies unknown, recorded oscillations that suggested propulsion beyond combustion, fields that bent magnetism, light that was neither wave nor particle, but a ghostly template upon which human cognition strained to focus. And the engineers, the analysts, the watchers became both priests and sorcerers, interpreters of a second heaven for the official sky. The ledgered, rational, cataloged Blue Book was a forged sky, a protective shell, a mirror polished for the eyes of the masses, yet within it, the second sky pulsed with machines and forces that eluded understanding, an invisible lattice of power, a cathedral of science and secrecy intertwined, where public denial served as the ritual veil, where every misidentified sighting strengthened the concealment, where the black cube of perception enclosed the truth in angles unseen, in corridors untraveled. And those 701 cases officially unresolved were no longer mere statistical residues, but symbolic fissures, glimpses of the hidden domain where technology had become alchemy, where alloys whispered, circuits hummed, and the light of radar and camera and instrument was refracted into a language known only to those initiated in the rites of measurement and secrecy. For to see beyond the forged sky was to encounter the unmeasured, the forces that could have torn comprehension asunder. And yet the adepts learned to tame them, folding the anomalous into programs of mastery, translating the impossible into data, the sublime into testable variables, and every recovered fragment, every unidentified report, every statistical anomaly became a node in the hidden lattice, a point of resonance between the machinery of the material and the machinery of perception, a network through which the human mind was drawn into contemplation of the unseen into the ritual of understanding, without revelation. And as the decades passed, the ritual strengthened. The sky itself became a theater, a screen upon which the public projected wonder, fear, skepticism, while the second sky, the lattice of experimental craft, reverse-engineered propulsion, and sensitive instruments, expanded ever outward in secrecy, a hidden network, a cathedral of potential. And above it all, the black cube of control remained, enclosing the truth in geometry, enclosing perception in angles, encoding reality so that the mind, left to its ordinary faculties, would see only what the ritual permitted, while the initiates, the engineers, the analysts, the architects of the hidden, walked between worlds, mediating between sky and second sky, between fact and symbol, between what could be reported and what could only be recorded in secrecy. And thus Project Blue Book, for all its public simplicity, for all its ledgered order, became not merely an investigation of flying objects, but a vast liturgy of technology, perception, and concealment, where the unseen machinery of flight, the oscillations of energy beyond comprehension, and the orchestrated theater of narrative coalesced into a ritual of mastery over both mind and air, a dual heaven in which humanity learned, incrementally, to touch the edge of the unknown while believing it was safely cataloged, measured, explained, and yet within that controlled sky, within the second heaven, the machinery pulsed, alive with energies and intentions that defied both logic and narrative. And those who looked beyond the veil glimpsed not only engines and metals, but the very mechanism of wonder, the lattice of control, the whisper of the impossible, the skeleton of potential, the secret currents of technology and ritual, entwined, inseparable, a hidden cathedral in which the mind itself became both subject and instrument. And through it all the black cube, the geometry of concealment, enclosed the work, a vault of observation and orchestration, the axis, upon which both perception and material mastery turned. And thus, the sky of Blue Book, so orderly, so rational, so public, was only the shadow of its true expanse, the forged sky shielding the second sky, the lattice of hidden craft and energy, and in the silence between the reports, in the reels and microfilms, in the classified memos and the sealed hangars, the machinery of wonder, of mastery, of perception, continued its endless rite, awaiting only the mind attuned to its signal, the eye that could see through the veil, the soul that could comprehend both the measured and the unmeasured, the recorded and the ineffable. And in that understanding, the full weight of the second sky became visible, an infinite cathedral of technology, secrecy, and ritual, where human mastery touched the edge of the impossible and returned, carrying fragments of light, sound, and resonance that would forever haunt the perception of those who dare to look beyond the forged sky. And so the sky of humanity, though ostensibly cataloged, observed, and rationalized under the ledger hand of Project Blue Book, was but a veil stretched over a deeper lattice, a cathedral of control where thought, perception, and belief were as carefully measured as the trajectory of unknown craft, where the engineers and analysts, the hidden adepts of state, became custodians not only of material innovation, but of cognitive dominion. For behind the public reports, behind the classified, reels behind the microfilms and sealed hangars, there existed an invisible technology, one not of alloy or turbine, but of the mind itself, the machinery of narrative, the orchestration of expectation, the codification of wonder into digestible increments, where ridicule and normalization were instruments as precise as radar and spectrometry, and every press release, every dismissed sighting, every debunked photograph became a ritual act, a hex or charm woven into the collective psyche to maintain the boundaries of belief, to construct the outer temple of the forged sky while leaving the second sky pulsing in secret with machines that defied understanding, with energy fields unmeasured, with propulsion that bent the conventional laws, and, as the public consumed sanitized accounts, the hidden adepts mapped the unknown with instruments that sensed frequencies beyond perception, recorded oscillations that danced between matter and potentiality, and traced patterns in the sky invisible to all but the initiated, crafting a lattice that entwined material craft, recovered fragments, oscillating energies, and the subtle manipulation of thought into a single, coherent matrix of control. For the black cube, both literal and symbolic, enclosed this knowledge in geometry and ritual, a containment of the impossible into the form of policy, protocol, and secrecy, shaping the narrative so that even when glimpses of the second sky leaked into sight lines, through unexplained radar contacts, anomalous maneuvers, or the stubborn residue of 701 unidentified cases, they were folded seamlessly into disbelief, denial, or dismissal, and the mind that attempted to pierce the veil was guided not by insight, but by the architecture of suggestion, the subtle choreography of expectation, the invisible hand of perception engineered to contain the uncontainable. And so Project Blue Book, in its public form, was a theater of reassurance, a ledger of explanation. Yet in its hidden form, it was a cathedral, a laboratory, and a temple of mastery, where technology and cognition, material and symbolic, fused into a ritual of dominion over sky, over light, over belief itself, where the recovered fragments from moon dust and blue fly were both talisman and text, each piece of exotic alloy or unexplained mechanism a node in the network, a glyph in the secret liturgy that allowed those initiated to perceive the second sky as one might perceive a hidden melody, a harmonic resonance between matter, energy, and thought. And within this lattice, the black cube functioned as both lock and mirror, both container and initiator, reflecting the perception of the observer while enclosing the knowledge of the true currents, guiding the unfolding of understanding so that mastery was incremental, ritualized, and esoteric. And even the 701 cases deemed unidentified in public filings were not anomalies but signposts, nodes of resonance, echoes of the hidden sky vibrating beneath the ledgered blue, teaching those sensitive to frequency, to pattern, to resonance, that the true mastery of the heavens was not in explanation, nor in sight, nor in proof, but in the comprehension of the second sky, in the discernment of the lattice, in the recognition that material craft, exotic energy, cognitive orchestration, and symbolic ritual were inseparable. A single cathedral of power and observation in which human mastery brushed against the impossible and returned transformed, carrying the luminous weight of perception itself. And the black cube remained, silent yet present, enclosing the work, guarding the lattice, ensuring that the public sky was calm, rational, cataloged, while the inner heaven, the second sky, pulsed with power, potential, and the unmeasured, and within its hidden corridors the engineers, analysts, adepts, and initiates continued the eternal work, aligning material, energy, and mind, orchestrating perception as carefully as trajectories, and teaching, subtly, that the boundary between the measurable and the ineffable was a lattice to navigate, a ritual to honor, and a sky to revere, the forged sky above for the uninitiated, the second sky below, pulsing with secret currents, and the black cube as the axis around which all understanding, all concealment, all mastery revolved until the observer, attuned and patient, could glimpse the infinite cathedral of both technology and perception, of ritual and measurement, of the visible and the hidden, and understand at last that Project Blue Book, in all its public rationality, was only the beginning, a surface upon which humanity first touched the edge of wonder, and in the silence of its hidden chambers, in the hum of its unreported machines, in the oscillations of energy and the rhythm of secrecy, the true sky waited, eternal, profound, and unknowable.